I'm absolutely unaware, as you can see. I thought last week I'd set it up for this week. I guess I didn't, because there was nothing pre-scheduled. Usually it'll do a countdown. Oh man, Bob Darlington, $5 to channel funds. Thank you. Let's see, who all have we got here? We've got Bob Darlington, James KI5OEB, and Austin Dunson, KF0FXC, Reed AB8AS, Logan Day from here in West Virginia. Matt Hopkins. Oh yeah, James, when you log on it doesn't show the previous comment. Howdy from Montana, K3 Hop. KN4ZIR, hello from Kentucky. And let's see, Dave Hadley, I'm just going to bed. It's 1:30 a.m. in the UK. Oh, they're still on British summertime. Love your videos. Catch you another time. I'll be here. I just put together this evening a video on Pacificon. It isn't quite done yet. I've got to put the outro on it. And I'll get that done, and that will go up very soon. I've asked my assistant. He's got videos scheduled out for the next week. So I've asked him to take some of these recent videos, like the Pacificon 1 and the construction of the new chameleon antenna. Will go up very soon, and we'll push those others further out till we get caught up on some of these videos. We did get the DX Commander up. However, it turns out that the previous assistant I had didn't watch the instructions closely, and the thing collapsed on us. So we're putting it back up with the right number of hose clamps and everything. Hello from Kentucky. Let's see, Matt Hopkins. Hello from Kentucky, KN4ZIR. Hi, Dave from New York, KD2FEL. Ooh, boy, I'm getting quite a few people in here. Richard Godfrey, what am I watching? Well, you're watching the pre-show. I turned this on to see if it worked, and I had forgotten to make the set up the live stream for this week, last week. So as soon as I hit start streaming, instead of holding it till 6:45, it just pushed it on in. Let's see. Ocala, Florida. Soggy, yes. Clearly he's wearing, oh gosh, yes, I gotta get my right shirt on. I have a niece in Salt Lake City, and she works for a company that does clothing items and stuff like that have people's logo on them. So she did some for me. I've got a few shirts with these logos, different colors. I usually wear a blue one. A bluer. I've got two. I've got this blue one, and I also have one that's more of a cyan kind of color. And I've got the giveaway here. I've got the already mixed up letters here. And so James KF5OEB has added $2 to the chat revenue. Thank you very much. And Lord Nigel Lawrence has added £1. Thank you. Oh, and we've got Ross, VK2YIO from Sydney, Australia. To Losing His Marbles. That is the relaxation shirt. Yeah, I just usually wear t-shirts. I wore this shirt at Pacificon. I think people recognize the shirt more than they recognize me. Because on Saturday I wore an ARRL shirt because I was going to be participating in their booth on Saturday, and the number of recognitions went way down. So I'll stick with these shirts. I have a red one of these, black, gray, and a couple of the blue ones. One's bluer than the other. Most men in the U.S. are colorblind to blue. I have real trouble seeing blue signs at night. I can see the cyan well. It was a real problem when I was doing my own color darkroom work, because blue is the opposite of yellow, and cyan is the opposite of red. And so yellow and red are two different colors, and I'd get photographs that looked very strange colors. And it took me quite a while to teach myself to recognize blue versus cyan. Cyan is a sort of a turquoise color. Let's see. Thanks, Warren Purcell. Howdy, Dave. Thanks for being such a great help in my becoming a ham. He's KO4QOA. And let's see. Greetings from New Hampshire. Godfrey has to leave. Hello from California, KM6CPH. A tech using my videos to study for my general. Hurry up, because those are going on the ARRL website. There's been a little bit of a glitch in my relationship with the ARRL. The technician videos are public-facing and always will be, but they want the ARRL general class and extra class videos to be behind a quote paywall. What that means is you have to join the ARRL to get them. Now that's a good thing in that you should join the ARRL, but a lot of people don't do it until after they get their general. So I'll continue working that with the league and see what we can get. The technician videos are out front. You don't need to be a member to get your technician license with that. I know a lot of people like to do the tech and the general together. The general's not that much harder than the tech. It covers the same kinds of things, but like, for example, in the general, in the technician, if you do a division, you always get an integer answer. In technician or in general, you might get some that have got 3.4 instead of just 3, so a little bit better. David, did you get my QSL card, KG0PL? I don't know. I've got a huge stack here. A huge stack. Now, for privacy reasons, I've got this stack. This is the stack. We're going to draw from these tonight. It's a huge stack. I've got them all mixed up. And we'll draw from that tonight. And the person who does that will get this radio. This is a QRP radio from HF SIGs in India. I've thrown in a power cord because the little power cord didn't come with this. It's got a microphone with it. You can plug a key into it. All you have to do to make it transmit CW is just press the key. I'm not throwing in the battery, but the cord does have power pole connectors. So if you're doing the power pole thing, you can use that. That's usually easy enough to get. I'm going to turn on the air conditioner. It gets warm in this room. It's 45 degrees outside, Fahrenheit. Recognize your shirt as you. Yeah, I get the feeling. I went to PacificCon this last weekend with my wife. She went. We have there's a gal who lives in San Ramon that is where PacificCon is, and this gal has known Loretta for over 40 years, so almost twice as long as I've known Loretta. But we went out and stayed with her, and it worked out very well. I just drove in to the Marriott, which was just down the road, and I was lucky to find parking places. I mean, the parking's a problem around there. And Loretta spent her time with her friend, although we both attended the banquet together. Let's see. William Myers, KA8GIM, has put $5 into the channel funds. Thank you. Says, thank you for reigniting my interest in ham radio. Well, I'm very glad. Very glad. Domino Storm 1 says Guinea-Bissau and Sao Tome and Principe are on 15 meters right now. That is very good. I can remember back, not the last solar cycle, but the one before, where I'd be working 15 meters till midnight, and I'd be working Europe on those. Oh, let's see. They were de-expeditions in Africa. Cool. Men have a higher proportion of color blindness, but no, most men are not colorblind to cyan or blue. Okay. I do have trouble with blue. I had to work very, very hard to be able to separate blue from cyan in my color darkroom. Oh, it is actually time to start. I'm Dave Casler, amateur radio call sign KE0OG, and welcome to our weekly live stream, which is held on Thursdays, Mountain Time, and whether it's daylight or Standard Time, it's at 7 o'clock. So we're coming up on the end of daylight savings time. We'll go to Standard Time. It'll still be at 7 o'clock. That means it will be an hour different on UTC. Okay, but we'll get that all squared away when we get there. Let's see. Where do I get one of those shirts? Well, I looked on my... I'm supposed to have merchandise for sale, but it doesn't show up on the channel. I don't know what happened. I'll have to have my assistant look into that. There are some shirts that have got printed logos on them. Some shirts that have got the logo and it says, "Ask me about ham radio," and things like that. Al Wilson, Can 60JX, says, "Last Friday I became an extra, and my local club is already putting me to work as a VE." Well, congratulations, Al, on getting your extra. And make sure you get that VE certificate from whatever VE organization you're working with. Yeah, the shirts themselves, I don't sell these shirts because, like you say, they are me. This actually is stitched on there, and a problem with it is the shirt was pre-shrunk. The stitching was not. So it tends to curl up like that. So, I don't know, I'm going to have to sew some kind of a plastic circle on the back of it so it can be seen. Let's see, we've got Bob Darlington Davis, a life member. "I'd like to work with someone to set up the equivalent of annual scholarships, but in the form of ARRL memberships. Is that a thing? QCWA already does school scholarships." Well, yes, if you will look at the video I'm going to put out on Pacificon, which will be up tomorrow, next day, Sunday maybe. My assistant comes again tomorrow. He stayed here 6 hours yesterday. We're so far behind. We've got lots of things to do videos on. Anyway, when you watch the Pacificon video, there are the particulars for the ARRL development manager. And she is the one who handles things like bequests and the scholarship setting up and things like that. I've got this radio to review. It's a UHF only 70 centimeter DMR and FM radio. I've got lots of little things I brought back from Pacificon. While I was going to Pacificon, I was in Reno, and I got a call from, oh dear, I'm going to embarrass myself and not remember the name. Don Sherman, W7SSB. He is a marketing type and works with several companies, and one of them is Chameleon. And he invited me to look at their new receive-only antenna. It's really nice. And I said, fine, send it along, except I want you to know that Don, who lives in Reno, and right next to in that valley there, half of it is Reno and half of it is Sparks. And Chameleon is in Sparks. And when he called me and got me on my mobile phone, of course, when you call somebody in your mobile phone, you never know where they are. And I says, Don, I am in Reno. And I will be in Reno again in a few days. Why don't I stop by Chameleon? And so I did. My wife and I went in and took the tour. They've moved to a new place that's about twice as big as what they had before. Their business is booming. They're doing lots of military business, too, at amateur prices. So That's good. And anyway, instead of one antenna, they gave me 3. So I've got those to take a look at. We got the X Commander up, but then discovered that the hose clamps were not everywhere they needed to be. And so we got it up and it collapsed. So we'll get that squared away probably tomorrow. And then we'll start doing a review on that. By the way, we did some early measurements before it collapsed. And I'm amazed at the SWRs are so good. Now I'm going to compare the DX Commander to my Step IR, Big IR vertical, which is my main station antenna, and see how that goes. They're both verticals. Okay, let's see. Hello from very southwest Cumbria, northwest England, UK. And he also has an American call KG0PL. And thumbs up everybody watching, says William. Thank you. Congratulations, Al, on your extra. Thanks for the heads up. I was a member of the ARRL when I first got my license, but I let it lapse. They've gotten expensive. They are $50, $49 a year. Is it worth it? Yes, I think it is. I've been a member of the ARRL for like 43 years. The thing about the ARRL to remember is it is a professional organization to join. It's not like joining AARP, although that costs a fair sum too. But there are about 130,000, give or take 10,000 ARRL members, whereas there are 700,000 some odd hams. Most of the members of the league are general and extra. Technicians are not taking the leap, and I think that is very sad because then you don't get QST. And QST, this is the latest. Here is it. Let's see. This is October. This is October's edition. And there's also a magazine called On the Air. There's also one that's a lot more technical, and there's a one that covers contesting. You can get one in print. You can get either QST in print or you can get the On the Air. The On the Air is designed for new hams. The QST is their general purpose magazine. QEX, which is their experimenters magazine, is much more technical. You'll see lots of equations and mathematics in there. And usually around page 50, there's this, let's see where it is. Where is it? There's a column called Ask Dave. And yes, that's me. So I've been roped into doing a column for QST. And yes, I do get paid for it. Not a lot, but do. Long-time question, what does the OG stand for? Well, it's the last two letters of my call sign. And if you look down, and I don't know if it'll be that way if you're looking at this on a mobile device, but down in the lower right-hand corner of most YouTube videos is a little icon. It's the channel icon. And it's a little square thing. So I tried to put my full call sign in there, and it was really tiny print. It'd be impossible to read. So I just put OG, and that didn't look right with just OG. So I put an exclamation point in there, and it kind of stuck, and that is the channel logo, OG. So the OG is the last two letters of my call sign, and well, it's called the suffix. It is the suffix of my call sign. And YouTube said, you know, hey, you got to have a cool name for your subscribers. I says, well, how about Oggies? O-G-G-I-E-S, Oggies. And somebody told me that that is a Welsh pastry. So you can think of yourself either as a subscriber to my channel, or I guess you can think of yourself as a Welsh pastry. Yeah, I've had a lot of people say it's the original Gangster. Look very well today. Happy to be here. By the way, just renewed my license and the FCC did not charge me. Yeah, it's free of charge and will be probably for several more months. You'd think when an organization has a chance to bring in a bunch of revenue, they jump right on it, but they're not. So it'll be a while. Dave, in the last few years, an absolute explosion in SDR, amplifier, and vector network analyzer projects. Yes. Do you think that will be an increasingly large part of the hobby going forward? Well, the 7310, which is the reference station radio, is all SDR. Okay. Now, a lot of hams don't know the difference between a vector network analyzer and an SWR meter. It turns out there are 4 what are called S coefficients. And it's S11, S12, S21, and S22. S11 is SWR. Now, vector network analyzer, at least I think it is, the vector network analyzer can do all 4 of those fancy coefficients. Now, that's cool. What does that tell you? The answer is, I don't know. I don't know that it really tells you anything. The important one for working with antennas for ham radio is your classic SWR. And those meters have gotten fancier and fancier and fancier. I've got 2 that I use. These are not the only 2 that I have, but these are the 2 that I use. This is the old MFJ, and it's just an SWR meter, and it will tell you on here on the screen both the resistance and the reactance of the antenna that you're dealing with. Now, something important to note, a lot of hams don't know this. When you tune for resonance, that's when X, which is the reactance, goes to 0. That's the resonant point of the antenna. That may not be the lowest SWR. That's because the SWR formula is all done with real coefficients, meaning non-imaginary or non-complex. And the SWR, which measures your reflected power, takes the absolute value of the reflection coefficient. The reflection coefficient is complex. It has a real and an imaginary part. And sometimes, if you go slightly off resonance, you can actually bring the SWR down. Okay, this will tell you the X and the R on here. One of the things I like about this, it's so easy to sweep across the band. It's done manually. You've got to set what band you're going to here. And then this little thing sweeps it across the band. You see the frequency up here. You see the SWR. You've also got meters here. One is SWR and the other is resistance. By the way, another thing that can go wrong is you may have let's see, X equals 0, which means resonant, but it's resonant at 30 ohms. Okay, so you've got like a 1.6 to 1 SWR there. So if you tune it slightly off resonance, the resistance can go up. You get closer to 50 ohms and your SWR looks better. Under those circumstances, you'll never get to 1 to 1. But anything other than 1.5 to 1 is golden. Don't worry about improving it. This is the other one that I have, which was actually sent to me by Rig Expert. I bought this years and years and years ago. Rig Expert out of Canada, based on the Reno Hamfest I went to a couple years ago. This is fancier, and it will give graphic representations of the SWR. It will also do Smith charts and fancy stuff like that. So this is more of a true vector network analyzer than is this, which is SWR. Again, older technology, but I use it. This is the MFJ 259B, and I think they're up to the D model now. Okay, let's see. Let's go back here and look at some of the comments. Alabama, Greg Embury, how are you? Bob Darlington, oh yeah, okay, so I almost worked a DX station on QRP, but only partial copy. He kindly asked specifically for QRP. I was 5 watts. Would 10 watts be okay? 10 watts is not considered QRP on 10 meter, on HF. HF QRP is 5 watts. Okay, now 10 watts you can do, it'd be low power, but it would not be QRP. Other non-QRP stations were running a kilowatt. Yeah, that's nice. And it's all on the honor system. Just keep at it. Let's see, K9GCP said just watched your video on WWV in the history of calculating time. Loved it. I work in the airline industry and wish we all just went to Zulu time. Yes, Zulu time is military time. It's actually UTC, but it is the naval, U.S. naval version of UTC. The United States is not the only country creating UTC. It's actually a committee in France that determines what UTC is. And every country's clock is some number of nanoseconds off of UTC. And it is up to this committee to use its algorithm to say, okay, everybody, for today, we're going to go 0.2 nanoseconds higher than what your clock reads. And that'll be UTC. For hams, the WWV time, which is the civilian version of UTC, is never more than a few nanoseconds different from the naval version. They coordinate very closely. The Naval Observatory has a bunch of atomic clocks, and they simply average them to get to UTC. The NIST collection, they have a bunch of atomic clocks. What's a clop? Clocks. And what they do with those, they don't just average them. They weight them. Says, we know this clock to be less accurate, so we will weight it less in the average. And they do that. And, of course, the NIST folks are absolutely convinced that theirs is the right approach. And the NRO, Naval Observatory, that's not NRO, that's NO, Naval Observatory, is absolutely convinced that what they're doing is the right thing to do. And the end result is a insignificant difference in time. It is there. There is a difference, but it is not big. If you look up there, you see that red light with the green light blinking next to it. That's a GPS receiver. And down here is a clock that is synchronized to GPS. Not synchronized to the 1 nanosecond. It's within a few milliseconds of the correct time, because it gets 1 pulse per second from the GPS receiver. So you've got jitter on the pulse and things like that. Whereas the really good atomic clocks actually synchronize a 10 megahertz output. And you can get, well, you're down to the microsecond or 1/10 of a microsecond there already. And you can get well down below a nanosecond with that sort of things. Some Italians I know call 100 watt QRP. Well, I guess that's how you define it. Yeah, if we could all go to Zulu, that'd be would be nice. Of course, you remember that back in ancient times, meaning last century, no, 2 centuries ago, last century was the 20th, in the 19th century, in every city, a jeweler in the city would check local noon, just simply by setting up crosshairs. When the sun crossed, that was local noon, And then he'd look at his clock and he'd see how many seconds it was off. He'd adjust it. And so his clock, which was usually out on the street, was official time for that city. Well, now the problem is the sun moves 15 degrees an hour. So 15 degrees later, in some other city, it'll say it's noon there. Well, you know, back in the days of the telegraph, sending time was easy. You just a dit and it goes to everybody. That's noon, okay? But the problem is that the railroads had, and the railroads were running trains before the telegraph came by about 20 years. And the way the railroads ran was they had to keep excellent time. Here's a fake railroad watch I got from the Durango Silverton Railroad. It is designed to look like a railroad clock. Okay, this would be a conductor's watch, except this is quartz and it's got a battery in it. And it is not working, so it looks like I need to put another battery in it. But they would have mechanical watches. And the railroad had railroad time. And the conductors would check their railroad time with their railroad headquarters. And so it could be as much as 20 to 30 minutes off from the local town. Some towns actually put 2 minute hands on their clock. One was local noon and the other one was railroad time. Well, finally they forced through, I think in the 20th century, the Standard Time Act, where they divided the U.S. into 4 major time zones. And then I think part of Maine is in the Nova Scotia, I'm not sure. And of course, Alaska and Hawaii are in wildly different time zones. But there were the 4 major time zones. And that way, that was for the railroad's convenience. And the problem with not knowing what time it was could cause trains to crash into each other because they were run to the second by these things to make sure that the trains passed each other on sidings and so on. Let's see. Explosion. We should get rid of time zones and rid of this. Oh, I'd like to go on permanent daylight savings time. I'm so sick of this change. The older I get, the harder it is to make the biennial change. GPS DO, when you have a fix on satellites, mathematically is the same tick as the rubidium clock on the satellites. We use them in cell towers. You might ask, if cesium clocks are so accurate, and that is what NIST uses for most of its clocks, why do they need rubidium clocks on the GPS satellites? Why not cesium clocks? The answer is very simple. Over the short term, cesium clocks output can wobble. So 1 second in 1 hour could be just a hair tad nanoseconds or femtoseconds off from a second during the next hour. They tend to wander, and the way that we get around that is to take a bunch of cesium clocks and average them. Well, you can't load down a GPS satellite with a bunch of cesium clocks. So they have rubidium clocks. Now, rubidium clocks have much, much better short-term stability. By short-term, I mean hours and days. And so they have to synchronize the rubidium clocks in the satellites with the cesium clocks on the ground. And the Air Force has a satellite control facility, I've been in it, where they manage this. And it's quite interesting to look at the difference. So that's why rubidium clocks in GPS. And they're not very big. They're like that, little tiny things. Cesium clocks are like half a room. So, okay. Yeah, Zulu and UTC never has daylight savings time. Yes, it's much easier, and that's why hams use it. I call it radio time, but it's time for many other things. Okay, so let's missed your update on flying and licensing. Oh, I'm not doing so good on that. By agreement with my wife, I've put my flight training on hold. I still have the airplane. It's fit, ready to go, airworthy. And in fact, I'm going to go visit it tomorrow because I've got a little piece of a GoPro assembly that's up there that I need here. We're trying to do videos a little differently with my assistant being the cameraman following me around. And the GoPro videos have very good image stabilization, whereas this little camera, which was advertised to have optical image stabilization, does not do nearly as well. And I have on order a little DJI Osmo. They've been discontinued, but some local store, it was Drone Nerds had them, and so it should arrive on Monday. But we'll use that, so it's not so jerky. I think we can make it go. Let's see. Hey, Dave, I purchased the Yaesu FT5DR while I prepared for taking the test. Is it illegal to use APRS? Well, it is now, because you don't have a license yet. Once you get a license, you will be able to use APRS. You can listen all you want, but you cannot transmit until you have your license. This is why I recommend strongly to people who are studying for their license that they do not get any equipment until they pass the test. And that goes for upgrading to general too. Now, the reason I say that is because in my 43 some odd years in ham radio, I've seen too many people buy really cool equipment and then for whatever reason, a baby, a new job, whatever, a disability, something, they never get their license. And then they've got this expensive stuff. All they can do is sell it. So I sell it at a loss. So I recommend let the getting of the radio be the thing that is your goal to spur you on to get your test passed. And then as soon as you do, go out and get that radio that you've been looking at. Okay, we've got Anderlis Zwarich Tutra. Lives in Penha, Santa Catarina, south off the coast of Brazil. Cool. Very good. So anyway, I did update the flying part. I'm not flying right now. My wife is extremely concerned about the safety aspect of it, and she took something that my instructor, my last instructor, said, that I was forgetting important things and not seeing important things. Well, mostly that meant the flaps. She had a landing method that when we were on downwind and pulled the throttle back, we'd put in one notch of flaps. On base, put in another notch. On final, put in another notch. And my new instructor, I went up with him just to ask him, am I really hopeless? And he says, no, absolutely, you're not hopeless. What he did was, he said, Dave, when you start your descent, put in 2 notches of flaps, and then forget the flaps. Just forget them till you get down on the ground. Then you can reset it. If you're doing a touch and go, you can drop one of those notches of flaps till you take off and then drop it completely. And it's like, problem solved. I don't know why I had such a mental block with adding the flaps. I got the radio calls right. I did everything right. A reasonably stabilized approach, all that kind of stuff, except for getting the flaps. It was driving me nuts. So this instructor, who is well known in the area for adapting his instruction to the student rather than make the student adapt to the instructor, said just set 2 notches of flaps when you start your descent and then forget about it. They get on the ground. And I'm going, problem solved. I've landed that airplane with 1 notch of flaps, 2 notches of flaps, and 3 notches of flaps. That's all there are, just the 3. And it is a notch. It's not a variable thing. It's like the old parking brake lever that you pull up and it goes click, click, and click. So you got 0, 1, 2, 3. And then you push the button in to go back down. So anyway, yeah, the saving times, APRS is radio. You're absolutely right. And it is illegal to transmit. So you can listen all you want on that radio. But what I would suggest you do instead is spend your time with the manual and the videos and get that license. And then learn all about APRS and get involved with that. It's a really cool thing. Cumbria, the MFSA, where did we go? It just flipped up on me. Oh, well. When I worked on the railroad the first few years, we had to take our watches to a jeweler to set it to railroad time once every 3 months. Pocket watches can be made to be extremely accurate. Mechanical pocket watches. Some of the conductor's watches, they still make a few mechanical railroad watches, but they're all little Chinese ripoffs. There is no market for a real conductor's watch anymore. And if you try to get an antique conductor's watch, good luck finding one at any kind of a reasonable price. Let's see. I found a schematic for an automatic keyer in 77A RRL manual page 364, making a PCB for it. Do I need to shield the wiring to the headphone jacks? I would, if I were you. Almost all modern radios, and I'm talking about going back 20 years, have built-in keyers. And so you don't need an external keyer. The older radios, like my the Yaesu FTDX, not FTDX, FT101B, doesn't have a keyer in it. I mean, it's just a very basic radio. Although, at the time, it was one of the best basic radios. MSF is still working in the UK. Cool. Yeah, permanent standard time. I'd like permanent daylight time if that's me. Been experimenting with NVIS antennas. I've made several different designs so far. 60 meters worked great during the day, but becomes nearly reliable. I think what he means is becomes nearly unreliable after sunset. Yes, that's when you need to go to 80 meters. Would 80 meters work reliably at night? Yes. Something I've noticed through the F of 2 has been decreasing. Oh, it's FOF2. Not sure what that is. It's been decreasing to near 2 megahertz. Well, I think you're talking about the MUF, the maximum usable frequency. Yes, that will change. The ionosonde looks straight up, and you kind of want to look out the sides. We talk about NVIS, near vertical incident skywave propagation. The near vertical is not, it's more, okay, because if you're going to go 300 miles that way, and the ionosphere is at 75 miles, you're doing this to hit that ionosphere and come down. Okay, so near vertical incident skywave propagation is a bit of a misnomer, but it does work on 40 and 60 in the day and 80 at night. Okay. Troop APRS doesn't do much for me. It was neat to see it work. I wasn't sure if this thing was transmitting a beacon to my location. I will warn you. I've looked at there's a website you can go, aprs.fi, Finland. There's a website you can look at that will show all the APRS activity in your neighborhood. Now, this is a leftover from 20 years ago when it was fancy stuff. Still there. You can watch people drive. Now, what's interesting is that part of the beacon transmitting in the so-called tracker should be labeled trackee, because that's what you're tracking. But it will show your ground speed with GPS accuracy. Who do you want to see that? Because records are made, records are kept in the APRS system so that you can look at a track over a period of time. So if you're going to have APRS on, don't speed. Please don't speed, because you're broadcasting your speed to everybody. Okay, weather beacons. Yes, there are weather beacons. Turn modem off in the settings. I spotted a Pico balloon on APRS last Saturday while my 10-year-old grandson was in my house. He thought it was pretty cool. And these Pico balloons are basically party balloons. And there are people, W2 KUB, is that right? He has a weekly show on Tuesday nights. That's all he does. He doesn't do very many videos. And he does these balloons. He gets a party balloon, and then it carries on a very, very thin piece of fish line a little circuit board about that big that's like a 10 milliwatt APRS transceiver. So it's got a GPS receiver, it's got an APRS transceiver, and the necessary coding in between. And then there is not a battery, but rather a very small solar panel. So it only works when there's sunlight. And those doggone party balloons will get up to 40,000 feet. And he's done quite a few of these, and he's had them last quite a while. What usually happens, they're in the stratosphere. Normally the stratosphere, there's no weather there. It's a nice thing about the stratosphere. It's why airlines like to fly there. But every once in a while, a thunderstorm, as it rises, will rise into the stratosphere. And if that balloon is coming along and hits that thunderstorm, it will get coated with ice because it's so high and it's so cold up there, and fall to the ground. And that's how they lose most of them. Okay, let's see. By the way, 40 meters is really busy now, almost all day long. I'll have to get on it again. Question, what is the practical difference running wideband versus narrowband FM on the Chinese dual band radios? In the United States, the standard FM is wideband. Now, in really busy metro areas, wideband is a 5 kilohertz bandwidth. Narrowband is a 2.5 kilohertz bandwidth. And in some very populated metro areas, they've asked people to go narrowband, and they're squeezing more repeaters in there. But generally, in the U.S., wideband is the accepted practice. Okay, wideband, narrowband comes from public service radio. All the public service radios used to be wideband, now are narrowband. Because there's so many of them, you know. The United States, when I was a kid, was 133 million people. We're up not quite 3 times that, but 2.5 times that. So that means at least 2.5 times more public safety people. Hello, from your experience, please, what's the best antenna for VHF, UHF? Well, for doing work, it's the antenna you have. I would recommend an outdoor antenna if you're operating from home, even if you're just using a handheld. My favorite 2-meter antenna is a J-pole, but you can just put up, and you can get these from MFGA for 25, 30 bucks, a little kit, and it's only 19 inches tall. It's got a little trap in there so it can be on 70 centimeters as well. It's got 4 radials and a clamp to hold it to a piece of pipe. What you can do is get a piece of aluminum tubing about 2 feet long, attach the antenna to one, and you've got your cable coming down, and just put that 2 feet down into one of the many vents on your roof. Not a chimney, but one of the vents. And there you go. You've got a roof antenna without doing anything special. Didn't get a radio till I got my extra license. Wow. Well, not HFCW until I can transmit, receive in 20 words per minute. I will tell you the best way to get your speed up, bar none, is to get on the air. And that'll get you up there. By the way, 15 words per minute will take care of most of your contacts on HF. Can't afford one, but I could afford manuals. So I have my extra class license, and I'm making the keyer so I can practice code and maybe get a QRP CW transceiver. Well, one like this, which is the one we're going to draw for in just a minute. This radio, whoops, there it is, okay, will go on any of the bands. It's got a touch screen on it, and it will do both sideband and CW. Nice little radio. There are lots of radios. The G90 is very popular. The 125 has been upgraded recently. The G90 is actually a 20-watt radio, and it's affordable. Although you might look at the ICOM 718, which is not nearly as fancy a radio. It's a couple dollars more, but it'll give you 100 watts. And it will do CW and stuff like that just fine. Tom Medlin, yes, thank you. W5KUB. Yes, he does the Pico balloons quite a bit. Ranger Smith said it worked for him to go ahead and get the equipment. Good. Good for you. You are in the majority, but they're just, it's a risk that I worry about some people taking. Going to make a keyer with my Arduino Nano. Yes. Was driving the car and asked Siri on my iPhone how fast I was going. I thought it would check the GPS, but Siri said, look at your speedometer. Oh, that's funny. There's a similar chip in model rockets. Yeah, they've done all kinds of fun things. Well, Dave, does propagation really exist in VHF and UHF comms, or just the HF? Well, anytime a radio wave propagates from one location to another, that's propagation. Now, there are many different kinds of propagation. UHF and VHF don't do the ionosphere thing. However, they will do tropospheric ducting. Now, the troposphere is the part of the atmosphere up to about 35,000 feet that has all the weather. Like I said, except for those thunderstorms. I was once standing on the dock at Biloxi, Mississippi, talking, a guy was standing next to me using his HT to talk to someone who was similarly standing on a dock in Tampa, Florida. So from Biloxi, Mississippi to Tampa, Florida, I think it was about 600 miles, and we're doing it on 2 meters. So if you look in your QST, there is a column called The World Above 50 Megahertz, and it's on page 80 in this. 80. This is the world above 60 megahertz, okay? And it is talking about, let's see, on the bands there, it's showing what people are doing in terms of long distance. Here's an example down here where they're looking at tropo and stuff like that. Yes, there are things you can do on that, with that. 6 meters, it does, yeah, sometimes sideband on 2 meters. You make your key or buy. Right now I'm using a Morse Mania app. QRP Labs do a great kit for $55 US dollars, a few bucks extra for the case. That will get you on the air. Yeah, that's QRP Labs and their kit, and I have it right here. This is the radio. I'll take it out. It's not very big. This is the mini version. I do not recommend getting the mini version. There's another version of this same kit, about the same price, that's in a much bigger case. I do not recommend the mini for first-time kit builders. You are asking for trouble, okay, because this is very dense. The one with the through-hole components is bigger, of course. Plus, I think I zapped this. I haven't really checked it out to see if I really did or it's repairable. Does SDR use an antenna? Okay, SDR is software-defined radio. What that means is instead of static components, like in a regular radio, where you have mixers and your RF, IF, and audio frequency and your detectors and stuff like that, what you do is you take the signal at the antenna and digitize it. And then digitally, you do your conversions. It's very clean, can be very clean, and do very, very well for you. Okay, so SDR is a type of radio that is replacing what for years has been the way we do it, super heterodyne radio, which was invented by Armstrong back over 100 years ago. Now, the SDR is just a different way of doing the same thing. It's the difference between a steam locomotive and a diesel locomotive. Both of them pull trains, okay? But they use radically different principles for doing so. So, SDR, yes, of course, you need an antenna. How does it interface with the computer? As it turns out, this radio that we're going to give away in just a couple of minutes has a USB connection on the back. Now, that's primarily for reprogramming the radio, because this thing has what he calls a Raduino in it. It's a Arduino that controls the radio. So it is actually computer controlled. It is not a software-defined radio. IC718 doesn't do FT8 or JS8 call. That's not a function of the radio. That's a function of a sound card. Now for the IC718, you will need a separate sound card. And I recommend the, I don't have it sitting here. There it is. This is your standard sound card. You can get them from other manufacturers. You can pay more, but I don't think you can get better. This is the one that kind of made computer type things like PSK and so on really popular. And this has a cable that goes into my Tentec radio. Now, the new radios, like the ICOM 7300, the sound card is built into the radio. But the 718, that's not the case. So you'll have to get a separate one. And these are about $100. So figure by the time you kit the thing up, why not just go for the 718? Okay, an SDR, you still need the front end. I missed the article on noctilucent clouds. I have to pull that out. You can get that from the ARRL. Okay, we are over time for the drawing. Okay, now here are all the cards. I've been shuffling these before the live stream. Okay, And there's quite a few here. I didn't count them, but I'd say there's at least 100, maybe 200 cards. Okay. Now, they can be a card, like a postcard or a QSL card. And I've noticed this time more people are sending postcards. So if you want to keep entering this every month, go down to the post office and buy 10 or 12 postcards. It's cheaper than using regular mail, and they're forever. They've got the forever thing printed on them. And that way you can, just keep sending in every month if you want to. Okay, so I'm going to stick my finger in about here. Now I've jumbled these up. So the winner, whoops, stuff going everywhere. The winner is John, can't read that, the postmark is over it, N7TES. Okay, and that is John Sherrill in Puyallup, Washington, 98373. He's in Pierce County, and his grid location is Charlie November 87 Tango Delta. So, John, I don't know if you're on tonight, but congratulations. You are the winner of this. Now, I've got to go down to the post. I was at the post office today, but I didn't bring back the medium flat rate box. I'll have to go get one and put this into it. We'll make sure it's well packed, and I'll throw some instructions in there too. He has an inverted V antenna. His main rig is a TS440S. Nice radio. He likes PSK 31. Okay, this will do that, but it doesn't have a built-in sound card. So there is the winner of our drawing. And John, congratulations. It's a nice little radio. So we're going to send that to Pew All Up. Pew All Up. Okay, Pew All Up. All right, okay. There it is. Now, what am I going to do with these? These old ones go in the shred pile. I do not keep track of anything. Names, call signs, addresses, or phone numbers. I ask you not to include your GPS because email. We don't need your email address. Just your phone number. Just in case we have a problem, he's got his phone number on here. Just in case we have a problem with getting it mailed out. So tomorrow I'll get the medium flat rate box and I'll print the label and we'll send this on its way to Puyallup. How do you get Pew out of that? Puyallup, Washington. So there it goes. All right. I tend to fly the antenna first and put the analyzer on it to see what it's doing. Yes. So congratulations to John Sherrill. And I don't know if, John, if you're on. I see lots of Johns, but not John Sherrill. Okay, now this is announced, of course, in my regular videos, which get a lot more views. I usually have, let's see, tonight we peaked at 215. And now that I've announced the winner, the people are dropping off. Sorry about that. Puke all up. Okay. For the drawing was next week. That's what I thought. No, the drawing is the last Thursday of the month. Last Thursday of the month. So the drawing for next time, let me show you what the prize is. This is going to have to really be rolled up a lot more. This right here is a Alpha Delta DXEE antenna. Now, the reason it's so stiff is because this is solid wire. These traps and everything are made like tanks. This is a very, very sturdy antenna. The connector here, does it have the lightning arrestor in it? I think it does, yeah, on the back. If it gets hit by lightning, it'll short across the antenna. This antenna works on 20 and 40, although it only covers part of 40, about half the band. 20 and 40, 15 and 10 meters. Okay, I was looking at this antenna to be as a candidate for the reference antenna, and it didn't cover all of 40 meters, so it didn't make it, but it's still a very good antenna. The nice thing about it is that it's only 40 feet long, whereas the reference antenna is 66 feet long. So if you've got limited space in your backyard, the DXEE would be a good choice. Okay, so from now on, send your card or letter or whatever to David Casler, KE0OG, P.O. Box 98, Ridgeway, or IDGWAY, no E, Colorado 81432. Mark down at the bottom, or wherever you put it, it's got to be on there somewhere, giveaway number 4. That will be the next one there. And then inside, I need the address to which you want it shipped if you win, and your phone number and call sign. Okay. So we'll get that out to John just real quick. Okay, gee, it is almost November, I know. What was the radio John won? Okay, this is, well, let me just go to it and show you. Screen. HF SIGs com. This is coming all the way from India. Oh, I really don't care. Okay, it's this one. How do I make this? Well, this is the radio. HF SIGs, the home. It's the Micro BITX version 6. It's this radio here. Okay, and let's make that a little bigger. Okay, and if you want to buy the full kit, it's 10 watts PEP on lower HF bands, dips to 5 on 10 meters, single sideband and CW, which means if you have a sound card, you can control, put this on FT8 or things like that. Now let's take a look at the price. Buy full kit. Okay, it's $209 now. So that's what we're getting, a $200 radio. Okay, and it shows you all the parts. Now the board, the basic board is all put together. All of the peripherals plug into the board. Okay, so it's essentially solderless. There might be 1 or 2 connections you have to do. It's a weirdly built case, but it works. There's a speaker in it, or you can plug in headphones, and it has the dials and stuff like that on there that you would need. Okay, so that is what he is getting. Let me make sure I don't kill the live stream. There we go. So that is what was won. Next time, well, we might as well look up the, let's go to dxengineering.com, and we'll go to, yes, I must have spelled it wrong. Come on. Okay, I'm not looking for MFJ. I'm looking for DXEE. Okay. We have to go, oh, wait a minute, here it is. Alpha Delta parallel dipole antennas. And we go to the DXEE antenna. And here it is. It won't come this neat because I've already put it together. We'll roll it up and get it into the box. Okay, it can take up to 1,000 watts BEP or 250 watts RIDI. Covers 40, 20, 15, and 10. It's 40 feet assembled, and it does not cover all of 40. It covers half of 40. And you determine which half of 40 when you put the thing up, okay? And somewhere I will find the documentation for it, which is here. Okay, instructions. I'll print that and send that along. Let me just print this while we are right here, and so I can throw the instructions in there. So that's what we'll be doing for next time. Let's see. Normal view. Okay, let's see. What is the radio, John 1? Got that? Have fun putting that antenna in a box. Oh, yeah. Yeah, we may have to go a different box. Dave, are you streaming on the last Thursday of next month? It's Thanksgiving. Yes, that is the plan. Okay, it's just my wife and I at home. Okay. And, you know, we'll probably be watching television that night. So, all right, let's see. Hello, Dave and everybody from Northwest Georgia, from Terry Ramey, K4TLR. Dave is on fire this evening. Wow, well, I'm trying, you know, answering questions. Hardcore Augie's still tuned in. Good. All right, hit the like button. 72 of us still need to hit the like button. Some people have got to run. I'm only really interested in the first 60 kilohertz of 40. Well, then you can tune the antenna to cover the first half of 40. Okay? And then it'll give you your CW and your FT8 and RIDI and CW, all of that sort of stuff. And it will do it very well. It'll do it very well. Now, the antenna as tuned right now is tuned for the upper half of 40, but I did not cut any wire. Remember, I did a video a while back about how I showed you could take a store-bought antenna and tuck the wire back in on itself and wrap it around so you didn't have to cut anything to shorten the antenna. And that's what I've done with this thing. So it'll still be that way. Okay, Dave, sorry for showing up late. Can you recommend a good portable radio that can be used in the house or vehicle? Well, portable. Let's assume you're talking about 2 meters. Okay, it would be a handheld, and you in the house you could connect it to an external antenna, and then when you're in the car, you could connect it to a mag mount antenna on the roof, assuming your car has a metal roof. Some don't these days. This is what a handheld looks like. Okay, and you can use this for short-range communications, but these have these so-called microwave connectors in here, and you can connect with an adapter, connect coax to that to go outside. Now, a bigger radio. No, I can't get it out. Sorry, too much stuff in the way. But a 2-meter radio. Let's just go back to DX Engineering and look at FM mobile. See what they come up with. Okay, here's an example of a very nice little overpowered. 80 meters is, or 80 watts is way too much. $149. It's quite inexpensive. This is FM only. It does not do the DX types of things. Okay, well, it doesn't do me any good to do that. There we go. Okay, this is a so-called mobile radio. There's, if you're going to do a base radio, you would use, there are base radios. Icom makes one. It's quite expensive. Or you could use something like the FT 991A. And that will cover all of HF plus 2 meters and 70 centimeters. Okay? And they will do FM, but it will also do CW, also do all those other things. This is pure FM. It doesn't do any digital. The Yaesu radio covers C4FM, which is the Yaesu digital. Okay? But this would be something that you could use. I hope that answers your question. Normal view. Okay, Optical Man Jeff has added $15 to the channel funds. We're up to $28.37. And KF5HCR says, go flying. Believe me, I would like to. How did the unlucky ham get his name? Dirk. I don't know, it could be spelled D-I-R-K, which is the normal way of spelling it. Optical Man Jeff, KE0KRO, who has $15 to the channel fund, says, thanks, Dave. Great job as always. Let's see. Does SDR use an external antenna? You certainly can. Remember, SDR is just a type of radio. The more standard kind of radio is a super heterodyne. Even the FM type radios. Okay. Been using a 20-watt Zygu for both portable and mobile ops on HF. Yes, I put the Zygu G90 on my desk, connected an antenna to it, and immediately was able to check into a net. And this was the middle of the day, and I think it was on 40 meters. And I thought I was using 20 watts. I thought, well, that's not too bad. Well, I checked the radio settings a little more carefully when I did my review of it, and found out it was actually on 5 watts. Its default setting is 5 watts. Okay, I live in the northwest corner of Missouri. Unlucky Ham has a good channel too. Good. There are lots of ham radio channels now. They're proliferating. I've been doing my channel. I was looking at some early videos, which were about 12 years ago, but those were the motorcycle videos and stuff like that. And then, about 10, 11 years ago, I got into ham radio. And at the time, I was one of the few people. There were a few other people, but now there's quite a few. John Mills, great talk you did on WWV. Trust you got my email to your reply. Good. My radio code clock is now a museum piece. Plus, I can't receive MSF on 60 kilohertz in the Canary Islands. True. Yeah, there's got to be something in the Canary Islands. I hope that volcano they're having on the island, and it's very dangerous from an interesting point of view. It's the most westward of the main islands, okay, and there is a very sheer, steep cliff. You go offshore, and it goes down very steeply to the bottom. Now, there's the Atlantic Rift Zone, and that's where the Canary Islands are. It's a volcanic rift zone. But if that cliff that's underwater there were to give way, you'd have a tsunami that would just wreak havoc around the Atlantic Ocean with huge walls of water all up and down the American East Coast. And, I mean, all around the Atlantic, it'd be terrible. And that volcano that's over there now seems to be getting worse as it goes. And it keeps opening up new lava channels. Houses are being consumed like crazy. Some of the lava has already reached the sea and created new land. I guess that's one way to make your island bigger. Yeah, that would be really something. I use RSP Duo, 50-foot chunk LMR 400 attached to a Discone. Yeah, that would work just fine. If you've not already previously covered ham radio antennas for use on sailboats, it would be a great topic of interest. If your mast is metal, you can load the mast, but I suspect your mast might be fiberglass. If that's the case, just run a wire up the mast, or even inside the mast if you can do that, and put it up there. If that the masts on sailboats need to be enormously strong. Now another way you can do it is to attach an end fed, like a end fed 40 meter, which is 66 feet. I don't know how big your sailboat is, from either the very front or the very back up to the apex, so that it doesn't get in the way of the sails, but you've got basically a sloper. And or you could actually mount a dipole up there if you could run the cable down the mast, because with a sailboat you're constantly moving the sails around. You don't want to get in the way of that. That could be a disaster. But that would be one way to do it. And by the way, ground, just put something metal into the water and you've got ground. Best ground in the world is seawater. Now note that seawater is also extremely corrosive. So if you put something metal into the water to act as ground, you may have to, if it's a little piece of copper pipe, you may have to replace it in a couple months. Now there are things that prevent so-called cathodic erosion that you can use for your metal parts on there. And if you're a sailor, you know what that is. Dave, do the ham sticks work very well on 40 meters for mobile? Yes, absolutely they do. The problem is you have to decide on your frequency before you start going anywhere, because they are extremely narrow banded. So you find the frequency where it works and you're going to sit on that frequency. Okay, to change frequency. Now, there are antennas called screwdriver antennas, which I'll let you look them up, but basically they have a long threaded screw, and a little stepper motor will move that antenna up and down so you can change frequency from inside the car or truck. Now the problem is, of course, simply moving the motor back and forth, you don't know where you are. So there are automatic tuners of varying degrees of automation. You can spend $1,000 on that or more. I would recommend the ham stick to get used to mobiling. Okay, and you get a clip mount for the trunk. They do make mag mounts for the top of the car, but they're monstrous. So better to do a clip mount on the trunk and have the stinger go out like this. The propagation will tend to favor forward a little bit on there. Okay, the population when I was born, 1953, was 160.18 million. A year later, it dropped to 160.03 million. 1953, what happened in 53? There was, of course, the Korean War. But I think what happened is the baby boomer peak was starting to pass a little bit. How can I get an interceptor radio? I think what you're looking for is what we in the States call a scanner. And there are a number of them available. I have an old Radio Shack one that I haven't used in years. But you can get them from a variety of companies. Somebody can name some of the companies here. But those are the ones that you use to listen to public service or whatever. Okay. The Yaesu 2980, built like a brick outhouse, but 2 meters only. I have a Yaesu dual band. It's a 7800. I have a Kenwood dual band that I don't remember the model of. and I have an icon. I can't remember if that's dual band or just 2 meters. Okay, and they'll work. They'll work. The Kenwood, I had trouble with the microphone, and it turned out there's a little sort of like a sponge pad underneath the microphone. So when you push down on the microphone, you don't just hit hard plastic, but you push the copper against this pad and close the circuit. And the pad had squished down so much with years of use that it wouldn't close anymore. I fixed that by just putting in a new pad. Let's see, mag mount in the middle of a Ford wagon works, but narrow bandwidth. Yes, true. 50 to 70 kilohertz bandwidth on 40 meters. That's pretty good for a ham stick. Okay, sailboat contacts. A lot of sailboats like to do HF for, can't remember. It's an online system around 14065 megahertz that's email connected. And you go into it with Pactor, or there's another kind of thing that you can go in with it. WinLink. It's WinLink. You go into WinLink on HF from anywhere in the world, and you can send in and receive emails from your friends. Some years ago, when Katrina hit the East Coast, there was a tall-masted sailing vessel, basically not a cutter. Anyway, it was a very fast sailing vessel. 3-master. It was a 3-mast ship. It was an old-fashioned ship designed like in the 1700s. And for some idiotic reason, as Katrina came, the captain thought he'd be safer at sea. He thought that the boat would be dashed to pieces against the dock. So he picked a crew, put that thing out to sea, and instead of bashing it to pieces against the dock, it just bashed it to pieces without the need of a dock. And what saved them was WinLink. They could not raise anybody on the radio, but the WinLink email to the Coast Guard went through. And a Coast Guard cutter went out and braved that storm, and as the boat was about to sink, they saved not all, but much of the crew. Okay? It was an idiotic decision. Let the doggone boat be smashed to pieces and get yourself inland. Taking something to sea to protect it from a hurricane is nuts, but that's what they did. Okay, 40 meters, 6 feet. 6 feet tall doesn't work too bad. Grounding is tricky. You can ground it to the car, of course. Might do a video on it. Certainly should do that. Greg Colbrath has to leave. N7 OVR. Thank you for being there. I want to intercept bad calls. How? Not sure I quite understand your question. Rephrase it if you would. Optical Man Jeff says, thanks, Chris. Life and Death says, ARRL antenna books go into sailboat antennas, and Gordon West has lots of experience with them. Okay, that's good. That's something to look at. I'm going to have to get on the people who do the antenna handbook because their explanation of infed ZEPs is a little... MFJ actually makes an infed ZEP for 40 meters, and it is a J-pole scaled up and then the top bend over so it's horizontal, and it works beautifully. How important is it to ground my hex beam coax at the base of the tower? if I'm going to use, I don't. We get a little bit of lightning here. Best practice is to put your lightning arrestor at the base of the tower. You've also grounded each tower leg, and you've connected all the grounds, bonded them. And then on one of them, you've got your alpha delta lightning arrestor. And then you've got your coax, however it gets to the house. You've got another lightning arrestor before it goes in the house. That is best practice. That is not Dave Casler practice, but it is best practice. I do not have a lightning arrestor at the base of the tower. It's only 20 feet tall, but that's still pretty tall around here because the trees top out around 35 feet. And I know that my roof is higher than that because I've stood on it and looked right over the trees. So I'm looking forward to giving out some QSL from an upcoming trip to the Bahamas and Caribbean. Okay, cool. That looks like fun. At least that's not the same as Alaska. Alaska should be K. Time to end the show, is it? Well, we got 5 minutes, but yeah, let's do that. Set up a 40, 20, 15, 10, and fed halfway with 49 to 1 on 40 low noise floor, but SWR is under 1.5 and all what might be going on. You're picking up more noise. A 40 meter has most of its propagation going up. As you go up in frequency, the propagation comes down. So it might be picking up noise from a local broadcast station or something like that. Need insulators as the mast is aluminum. If you go to a farm supply store, go to the electric fencing section and get electric fencing insulators. They're dirt cheap, and you can use them. Okay, square rigged or fore and aft. I think that sailing ship was designed to imitate one of those sailing ships that would go across the oceans before steamships would go across really fast. WinLink HF used in the sail mail system is a 300 baud system, 1200 on a really top day. Yes. Pactar 4, which is not legal in the U.S., is more than a 300 baud system. The problem is that, and I have not found this in the regulations, I can't find it, but the ARRL says that the regulations limit us to 300 baud on HF. I don't know why. Email or favor refers to antenna tuner. I'm getting back in HF. Been thinking of picking up the ARRL antenna book. Is there a better reference material out there? It is excellent. Now, there is a German book, Roth Animals, that you can get from the German Amateur Radio Club. I picked one up of those. It's quite interesting. I'll use 6-foot separators and hang that dipole under the aft stay. David started streaming 96 minutes ago. Oh, yeah, that's because the first part of it didn't count. Okay, well, let's just say 73. Schooner, SCHO. It wasn't a cutter, it was a clipper. They were like four-masted ships, and the captains on them were all mad. I mean, when there was a really strong wind, rather than furling the sails, they would rig them up and go as fast as they could, because they were trying to beat other people to the U.S. to sell their goods first. Okay, blessings, great show. Schooner, have a good weekend. Do beams need to be on tall towers, or can they be roof mounted? They can be roof mounted. You won't get as much out of them as you might on a tower, but a 35-foot tower will do really well with most of them. So I'm going to say 73 at this point. It is time to quit. I apologize for starting the video feed early. I wasn't ready to do that. I was going to start on time. I'll try to start on time next time. In the meantime, get ready to look for giveaway number 4, which is that antenna, which we will somehow force into a box and get that thing to you. It is built like a tank. And it's only 40 feet long, and it does cover 40 meters. So, to all 73, and we'll see you next week.